Hello, my name is Maria Evelyn.
And I'm Lindsay Lincoln.
And we are the co-directors of the Fair Housing Project of New Hampshire Legal Assistance. We are going to talk about a topic that is very common in our Fair Housing Project and has to do with certain protections that the Fair Housing Act offers for certain protected classes that cannot be discriminated in housing. One of those protected classes and one of the areas and the type of cases that we see is for individuals with disabilities. So first of all, I'm going to ask Lindsay, what is the definition of a disability, Lindsay?
So under the Fair Housing Act, a disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. So that could be a person who has a mobility impairment that substantially limits their ability to walk. Other major life activities could be sleeping, eating, thinking. Any person who has an impairment that substantially limits one of those types of major life activities would be qualified as having a disability under the Fair Housing Act.
So what are the rights that individuals with disabilities have in a housing setting?
So individuals with disabilities have the right not to be discriminated against. And one of the common areas we see where individuals with disability are facing discrimination is individuals being denied requests for reasonable accommodations and reasonable modifications in their housing situation.
And what is the difference between a modification and an accommodation?
So a reasonable accommodation is a request for a change in a landlord's rules, policies, or practices that would allow the person with a disability to equally use and enjoy their housing. On the other hand, a reasonable modification is when the individual with a disability requests a change to the structure of their dwelling. So for example, a reasonable accommodation that we're going to talk about in this video a little bit more is the request for assistance animals. An example of a reasonable modification might be an individual who needs grab bars installed in their shower. That would change the structure of the dwelling, and so it would be considered a modification.
I see. And also, so let's say that I am an individual with a disability, I have an assistance animal, that I realize that where I live there is a zero pets policy. What do I do in a situation like that? Do I have any rights as a disabled individual?
Yes, you would. Under the Fair Housing Act, a person who has an assistance animal in housing is not subject to their landlord's no pets rule if they request a reasonable accommodation from that rule. So if you have an assistance animal, you would communicate to your landlord explaining that you are a person with a disability and you have a need for an assistance animal because the animal alleviates one or more of the symptoms of your disabilities.
What sort of evidence do I have to show to make that connection, and who could provide the support that I would need?
A lot of times we have tenants who think that they have to get some sort of certification from a medical doctor, and that's the only paperwork that could be accepted because some landlords claim that it must be a letter from a medical doctor. That is not true. Under the Fair Housing Act, you can provide support from perhaps one of your counselors or a nurse practitioner. It doesn't have to be a medical doctor. Just needs to be someone who has knowledge of your disability, the limitations imposed by your disability, and how an assistance animal would alleviate those symptoms.
So if the landlord said, okay, fine, you can have your assistance animal, but I'm going to charge you a monthly fee for you to have that assistance animal. Is that permitted?
No, it is not permitted for a landlord to charge you any fees or costs associated with your assistance animal unless the animal has caused damage to the unit. But as a monthly fee or a deposit, no, the landlord is not entitled to ask that from someone with an assistance animal.
What about if the landlord said, okay, you can have an assistance animal, but you cannot have this type of dog, it has to be only these breeds, or it has to be a dog that is, under a certain pounds. Do I have to comply with that?
No, you would not need to, because under the Fair Housing Act, breed restrictions do not apply. Because breed restrictions, your landlord's breed restrictions apply to pets, and assistance animals are not pets. The landlord cannot dictate what type of breed of dog you have as your assistance animal.
Like, what if the landlord said, well, I need you to show me that your assistance animal is registered and has a special training and a certificate that are like a service dog. Then what if my animal is a cat, for instance, my assistance animal? Like, what would happen in that situation?
So sometimes we come into that issue where landlords are confusing service dogs under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, with assistance animals under the Fair Housing Act. Assistance animals under the Fair Housing Act are not required to be dogs. They can be cats or other animals. And they are not required to have any special certification or training. So a landlord who is saying you who have a cat as an assistance animal is not permitted and must be removed from the home, that is not correct. You are allowed to have cats as assistance animals and other animals as well, assuming that your need for them is necessary. So Maria, if someone has requested a reasonable accommodation from their landlord and their landlord has denied them, what should they do next?
They should contact us at New Hampshire Legal Assistance. We'll be happy to review your case, and maybe we might be able to represent you.
And we want to thank you all for tuning in today. We will have further videos coming, but we appreciate your attention.
Thank you, and bye-bye.